When someone accidentally threw away the school play costumes,
Oh no!
replacements were shipped with FedEx. And with picture proof of delivery, everyone could focus on the perfect opening night. FedEx, where now meets next. For residential delivery only.
Today on CityCast DC, is rising crime actually driving DC restaurants out of business? That's what some recently closed eateries say. But the stats are a little less clear. What isn't in doubt is that this sense of insecurity is affecting decisions by diners and the establishments they frequent. David, just David, that's the anonymous mystery man behind the Eat DC social media feed, is here to explain what's up. Today is Monday, December 11th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. So, hey, David, there have been a bunch of restaurants that have closed over the last few months. Can you tell me about some of them?
Yeah, just over the last couple months, there's been Bammy's down near the waterfront, wine bar called Bottles. Buttercream Bake Shop was, really beloved place that announced that they're closing at the end of the year. Crazy Aunt Helen's on Barracks Row, Fancy Radish, vegan place on 8th Street, Flight Wine Bar, Swingers Navy Yard closed down on Half Street after just like 8 months or so. And then the Gibson, a cocktail bar that's been around for a long, kind of a trendsetter, kind of the speakeasy trend in DC is closing at the end of the year also. So quite a few notable names that have come up recently.
All right, so looking at it from a long view, though, restaurants open, restaurants close. That's kind of what they do. It's a easy come, easy go business. Is this number more than usual?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. And, people were asking me about that on Twitter also. And I tried to take a look at previous years and take a look at and also number of restaurants that are opening at the same time that restaurants are closing. And so, maybe capture both those. One is that, we had this conversation around the same time last year, and there's kind of a reason for that. A lot of restaurants try to get through the summer and then ahead of kind of a slower season when the weather gets cold, make a decision that, it's just not financially feasible to keep going. And so they cut their losses. And so there's something about, this time of year that you seem to have a cluster of closures, and it's not necessarily much different than last year or previous years. And definitely the overall trend, you look at the openings, there's about the same number of places opened as closed during the time frame that we're talking about, the last 6-8 weeks. But what is a little different is some of the reasons that restaurants are citing, notably, I know crime, or the perception of crime, or a lot of the knock-on effects of crime. And so that's kind of, I think, caught some people's attention and also given people who maybe were already trying to make this argument a little bit more ammunition.
But wait a minute. So if the number of restaurants that is closing is basically not any different than a normal year, why should we put a lot of stock in the reasons they cite for closing?
Well, I think one is that this is kind of the first time you've seen restaurateurs, business owners, cite crime as one of the reasons. Definitely, it hasn't been the reason, it hasn't been the only reason, it hasn't even been maybe the most important reason, but at least in my reading, it's the first time in recent memory that you've had restaurant owners cite this. And so obviously, like every restaurant has unique circumstances for its closing, and there's a lot of challenges that are kind of hard to enumerate, but it is unique in seeing, those, I think that the two that kind of made the headlines were Brine and Buttercream Bake Shop, both saying one day apart, similar messaging that crime was affecting their business and influencing their decision to close.
Well, let me ask you, because a lot of people might look at the data set and say, well, they're just making excuses. Do you believe them that these are reasons for closing?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to believe them. Like I responded to someone who kind of said, similar line of questioning, what's their incentive to say that if they don't believe it? Like the counter argument is that people are citing crime to basically be able to cover up bad business decisions. You can instead of blaming yourself, you can blame others. I would say at least for those two particularly, I think they're pretty honest brokers, the owners of those two places that I cited. And even if it's not the primary reason, it's interesting that it is a reason. And I think that maybe probably coming from different perspectives, but you can understand someone who maybe just if it's already hard, that something like crime, either directly or indirectly, would be like kind of the last challenge that makes them seem like, you know what, it's not really worth it anymore.
The brand new Arbor at Tacoma is built for your most convenient urban living. Whether you want to enjoy the vibrant Tacoma, DC community or comfortably retreat into a sleek sanctuary all your own. The kitchens have striking dark navy and white cabinets, and throughout the home, there are wood floors and smart home technology. Some homes even have a private outdoor space. With a quick walk to the metro, you can easily head into downtown or stay close and enjoy the retail that's on site. Located at 218 Cedar Street Northwest, the Arbor Tacoma offers brand new 1- and 2-bedroom condos starting in the upper 300,000s. Visit thearborattacoma.com for more information. That's Tacoma with a K, so Thearborattacoma.com.
Maruchan superfans are everywhere. From the busy moms who want to deliver maximum flavor in a flash to dorm room diners who want to put some slurp in their step. There are a ton of copycats you could use, but if you want to bless your bowl, there's only one true Maruchan. Whether you choose instant lunch, ramen bowls, yakisoba, or restaurant quality gold, Maruchan is the only ramen worth obsessing over. Smiles for all. Maruchan. See what all the ramen hype is about at maruchan.com.
What are some of the ways they say crime has affected their business?
Definitely multifaceted. And I think Tim Carman did a good job in his Washington Post piece kind of laying out some of the direct and indirect aspects of crime. One is just very directly that places are getting broken into more than we've seen before. You're having like property damage and personal losses through stolen inventory. I'm not sure if that happened to the places that cited it, but it definitely has happened around the city more than we've seen previously. There's also a big thing of perception when customers are reading about crime happening in certain areas and they don't live there. They have other choices. They might choose not to go to the areas that are seen as being higher crime areas. And I think, at least anecdotally, been hearing from both restaurant owners and customers saying, like there's areas that I went to before that I didn't really go to before, or restaurant owners saying there's customers that were coming from outside of the city to come to my place that no longer feel safe doing so. So there's also like a big perception, but then there's also just very direct costs, like Tim Carman mentioned in his piece, cost of insurance goes up when crime goes up. So you're having very direct impact to business owners. So it's definitely multifaceted, and every restaurant and business experiences it differently.
So a lot of restaurant owners have also criticized Initiative 82, which is the phasing out of the tip minimum wage, saying that's the reason their businesses are suffering. Does that, in your opinion, play into these closures?
At the end of the day, this is not true for everyone, but true for most places. Like if you're making enough money, you stay open. So like if you have enough people, you're making enough money, you deal with the challenges. But if you're kind of on the margins, sometimes the challenges just become too much and not really worth it. And I would say, in addition to crime, something like I-82 is definitely a challenge, even if it's not necessarily a negative overall. It's a challenge in terms of how to operate, how to change your business model to keep making money given I-82. And you've seen a lot of different owners handle that differently. And that's led to, I think, a lot of confusion, frustration, animosity between business owners, between customers. It just adds this whole other layer, this whole other dynamic on top of all the other challenges that restaurateurs have always had to deal with. The
challenge being that all of a sudden their labor costs are going way up, at least on paper, because they have to pay people a real minimum wage.
Right. And not just that, because like the layperson's like, well, if you just pay them and I don't have to tip them, then it's just a wash, right? But you have all these different approaches to figuring out how to keep your business at a certain level by changing your menu prices or adding fees or, all these various ways that restaurateurs are trying to basically keep their profits up and keep their employees paid basically around the same or more than they were making before. There's a lot of variables there. And in trying to tackle that, there's been a little bit of a tension created between customers, employees, and customers. And so there's some places have experienced a backlash towards adding certain service fees or I-82 fees, sometimes they're specifically cited as, and it adds just another layer of tension between the customer and the business that wasn't there before.
All right, so look, this is taking place, particularly these claims about crime leading to restaurant closures are taking place against the backdrop of a pretty vexing city debate about crime. The mayor of the city has called for a bunch of more punitive legislation. There's fairly acrimonious accusations and counter-accusations, accusations aimed at members of the city council and the broader community who are seen as being skeptical of police and so on. The restaurants, they do have a trade association that lobbied very hard on the Initiative 82 matter that's called the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington. Have they been outspoken at all, in favor of any particular measures on crime?
Not that I've seen, and I haven't really seen sort of this topic been approached with that sort of centralized voice. It would be interesting to hear what they have to say on the matter and to maybe hear more from their perspective on what they're seeing across the business community, across the restaurant community. I think it would also lend a little more credence to these restaurateurs who do speak out to say, is it common, or is this really, are these isolated incidents or isolated feelings? So I haven't really heard much, and I think it'd be really interesting if we did hear something from the Restaurant Association on what their perspective was and maybe some proposals that they think should be moved forward.
Do you expect to see more closures in the coming weeks? We've got 4 or 5 weeks left in the year.
There's always closures. There always will be closures. But I also have a long list of places that are opening up just in the next few weeks also. So it's a really dynamic time. And I think with the things that you mentioned, like crime, like I-82, like all the challenges that always exist, there's always going to be fluctuation because of different things happening in different neighborhoods, different neighborhoods changing and wanting different things from their neighborhood spots. You're always going to have turnover. I don't know if there's going to be any, another big wave like we saw over the last few weeks.
David, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Maybe I can come back and talk about something besides restaurant closures hopefully sometime.
So after I did this interview, the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington did actually release a statement about crime prevention in the district. They testified in support of Mayor Bowser's new crime bill, which creates new penalties for organized theft. They're also asking the council to pause the ban on cashless businesses. We'll link to their full letter in our show notes. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, tell the server about it next time you eat out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.